Um, we have Bhante Pemaratana from Pittsburgh, USA, here for this special Vesak evening's Dhamma sermon. Uh, excuse me. And we have actually especially invited him because he's very popular and he's been to Buddhist Mahavihara many times to Malaysia and he's got a huge following here as well. So let me quickly read Bhante's profile and we'll get straight to his Dhamma talk. Bhante, Dr. S. Pemaratana is the chief abbot of the Pittsburgh Buddhist Center in the US. He holds a bachelor's degree in Buddhist studies from the Pemaratana University in Sri Lanka, a master's in philosophy from the NUS in Singapore, and was also conferred a PhD from the University of Pittsburgh last year. He conducts regular workshops and meditation at his center and also at yoga studios in the greater Pittsburgh area. He also provides spiritual counseling to help Americans deal with the challenges of modern living. So without much ado, I'd like to invite Bhante to start this evening's Dhamma sermon. Bhante?
Thank you, Brother Leslie. Thank you for the invitation. And it is great to be connected to every one of you. I hope that you all spend a very fruitful day since this morning. I know that Buddhist Mahavihara has been conducting this online Vesak program since early morning. So I'm very glad that you were part of that and you spend this very important auspicious day in a very fruitful way. So I extend my greetings also to you, and may you continue the rest of the day with so much of wisdom and compassion. And so today I'm going to speak a little bit with you about the Buddha. Definitely, today is the best day that we can talk about the Buddha. And then hopefully, we will develop more closer understanding of the Buddha. One thing we need to remember is that although we call the Buddha, we use the term Buddha most of the time, and the Buddha is not a name. The Buddha is not the name of the Buddha. Although we use the term Buddha most of the time, it is not the name. Actually, but Buddha is a status. It is the level of mind that Buddha achieved. So we will we will discuss that in the whole meaning of the term Buddha. Although so whenever we use the term Buddha, we are referring to a evolved state of mind and a kind of evolution of mind that that the Buddha of our time has reached and helped many others to reach. So when you think about your own understanding of the Buddha, I think we come to know about the Buddha since we were children. I remember when I was a small child, how I came to know about the Buddha. So I remember seeing beautiful paintings of the Buddha, particularly with the surrounding aura of the Buddha, and I love that paintings with the nice aura of the Buddha, and then of course during Vesak time we see other statues, other paintings of the Buddha, particularly when I saw pandals. I remember how different colors, beautiful lights surrounding the Buddha. So whenever I go to temple and whenever I see Buddha statue when I was a small child, it was always big in size. So I had, that um, image of the Buddha, which is like extraordinary, big in size and, aura all around the Buddha. And that kind of understanding, Buddha as a very extraordinary being. And then, of course, when I became a monk and when I learned the teachings of the Buddha and when I learned the Pali discourses and other Pali literature, I came to know that the aura around the Buddha is something that will emanate from him when he is in deep meditation, not all the time. When he's in deep meditation, whenever Buddha wanted to use his aura for someone. So So then I realized that what is presented in shrine rooms, in pandals, uh, actually one image of the Buddha, but it is not. Buddha is not always like that. Buddha could emanate that aura when he's in deep meditation, whenever he wants it to use for to teach someone. Then, of course, when I learn more about the Pali discourses, I begin to realize that there's a very human aspect to the Buddha. Buddha is always going for his arms round. He's going for arms round, and so he get take rests, and then he will feel tired, when he walk. And there are instances, in the discourse where Buddha express, his physical fatigue. So when I learn about those things, then I have another image of the Buddha. When I was a child, the extraordinary image of the Buddha, and then when I learn through reading the sutras, and I learn the more human aspects of the Buddha also. So always there's a dual aspect to it. On one hand, he was an extraordinary being, not only in terms of aura, but also in terms of his ability, his achievement, his wisdom, his compassion. But on the other hand, he's also carrying a human body, and he's subject to all the things that is happening to his body. He feel hungry. He feel thirsty. He feel tiredness. So he had to take care of his body. That is why he went for alms round almost every day. So this dual aspect of the Buddha is something that in the beginning feel like contradictory to two images of the Buddha. The extraordinary image of the Buddha and ordinary human aspect of the Buddha. But I think more you learn, we can actually reconcile these two aspects of the Buddha. That's what I really wanted to discuss with you, for us to understand, how this human aspect of the Buddha can be reconciled with extraordinary nature of the Buddha. How we can put these two into one person. I think the very term Buddha can help us to understand that. Uh, as I told you earlier, it is not the name of the Buddha. Of course, we know that the name of the Buddha is Gautama, or Siddhartha Gautama. That is the name of the Buddha, name of our current Buddha. But most famously also, this Buddha also is known as Shakya Muni Buddha, because he's from a Shakya clan. So sage of the Sakya, Sakyan sage. So Sakya Muni. But actually, the term Buddha refers to the state that he achieved. And we need to remember that the term Buddha is actually the meaning is the awakened, and the term Buddha is a past participle of a verb. So this is a very interesting term actually. So because we can form nouns through verbs. So the term Buddha is something like that, so for example, when people depart, when people passed away, we call them, they depart. And so from the verb depart, to depart, we can use a noun, the departed ones. So in the same way, the term Buddha is in Pali language is a past participle of a verb called bodheti. Bodheti means to realize, to awaken, to come to know. So the term the Buddha means that the past participle of that verb. That means can mean like the realized one, the awakened one. So that's the real meaning of the term Buddha. So for us to understand this, then we can actually refer to one important sutra, one important discourse of the Buddha. It's called Dona Sutta, and that is one very important discourse for us to deeply understand the real meaning of the Buddha, or who is the Buddha. That sutta is found in Anguttara Nikaya, And then, so there's an important discussion between the Buddha and the Brahmin called Dona. And Dona was a Brahmin, a learned person. He's particularly knowledgeable of the physical features. The people can look at physical features and then can predict the personality of that person. So he was kind of developed that kind of science, so to speak. But this Brahmin Don is also quite expert in analyzing footprints. So Buddha once walked on a sandy path. So his footprint was marked on this on along the road. So this Brahmin Don happened to come behind the Buddha and noticed this beautiful, very extraordinary footprints. And when he examined that footprint, the way the Buddha has stepped, and the feature of this footprint, he realized that these footprints do not belong to a normal person. The outline of the foot, of course, Buddha has specific physical marks. And so the outline of the foot, and also the way the Buddha has walked, the calmness, Buddha is walking on the earth as if Buddha is kissing the earth, Buddha is really with compassionate, with calmness, with patience. He doesn't like, run around and, walk in hastily. So Buddha was like very mindfully walking. So once he saw the footprint, he realized that this should belong to someone special. So he wanted to find out who's that Buddha. So he just simply walked, follow that footprint, and he wanted to see. We were going to talk to this person. So when you follow this footprint, and then so he found after he walked for some distance, there is somebody sitting under a tree. The very vision of that figure, the image of this great person sitting on the tree, really impressed him. According to this sutta, it's explained that whenever he saw this image of the Buddha, he saw that how still his body is there, and how peaceful his appearance, and also how calm his senses, the way he cast his eyes, the very conduct, everything looks so serene, so peaceful, so calm, and that was already astonishing to him. And then, of course, he approached the Buddha and asked series of questions, because this Brahmin thought that, this learned person thought that this should not be an ordinary human being. This shouldn't be a human being. This should be someone come from a different world. This kind of being cannot exist in this world. So should be someone who came from a different world. So he asked a series of questions, particularly asking, "Who are you?" So this discussion is a very, very beautiful discussion. In fact, I remember that there's a very important Dhamma talk given by our late chief, most venerable K.Sri Dhammananda Nayaka Mahathera. And he has given a very beautiful sermon on this sutra. And I remember there was a CD in Buddhist Mahavihara with this sermon, together with some singing of the meaning of this sutta, the discussion of Buddha and this Brahmin had with the Buddha. Someone has made into a song, and hopefully you can listen to it one day. I just want to mention about that. And so this Brahmin came and asked from the Buddha. First question he asked: "Are you a deva? Are you a divine being?" Because that was his first guess. Are you a deva? Of course, the many think that Buddha is a divine being, but Buddha answered that, "No, I'm not a deva." Then he was a little disappointed, because he thought that that is the classes of beings that he thought like highest, according to the Brahmanic belief. Then he came to the next category of beings. He asked, in that case, are you a Gandharva? Gandharva is more like a semi-divine being in Hindu mythology. In particular, they are good in arts. So the second question was, are you a Gandharva or semi-divine being? The answer was, no, I'm not Gandharva either. Then he thought that in that case, the Buddha should be a demon in disguise. Again, not human. So he asked the third question, are you a demon in that case? Obviously, the Buddha's answer was no. Then he went through all these categories of beings that he was aware of. And then he asked the last question. In that case, he thought that, okay, in that case, he should be a human being. And the question was, are you a human being in that case? You should be a human being in that case. Well, what do you think the answer was from the Buddha? It is interesting. Even to that question, that are you a human being? In that case, Buddha answered negative. Buddha said, no, I'm not an ordinary human being. Then Buddha went to explain that if I am a divine being, all divine beings are attached to their realm because of certain defilements they have. So different beings are born into different realms based on their attachment to different things. So Buddha said that any mental qualities, any mental conditionings that made someone a divine being, those mental conditionings are not present in me. And any mental conditionings that made someone Gandharva are not present in me. Any mental conditionings that made someone a demon is not present in me. And similarly, any mental condition that made someone a human being are not present in me. So therefore, you cannot really call me in either terms. But the Buddha is saying that you cannot really classify me into any available classes of beings. This is a very interesting point. What you call the Buddha is not someone that we can categorize into existing classes of beings. Because all these classes of beings has their own unique, their own distinctive characteristic, distinctive mental conditionings that made them who they are in these different realms. But when it comes to the Buddha, you cannot find those conditionings in the Buddha. So you really cannot classify Buddha into any category of beings. It's beyond all categories of beings. And so Buddha told this Brahmin that you cannot classify me into any category of beings. Therefore, Brahmin, you can call me the Buddha. So Buddha gave this term, the Buddha, to refer to him, to indicate that he has transcended all categories of beings. His mind has transcended all the ordinary conditionings that all other beings are having. So Buddha is beyond the world. That's what is meant by the term Buddha. That his mind doesn't belong to this world. It's not worldly. It has transcended, all these conditionings that we usually have, all these defilements, all these limitations that we all have. Then Buddha gave a very beautiful simile. That is the simile of the lotus. Buddha told the Brahmin Dona that, Dona, of course, I am in human form. so if you really want to call me, you can call me extraordinary human beings because I'm in human form. But remember, just like a lotus is rooted in the mud and then fed by the water, but lotus can rise above the mud and the water and become unspoiled, undefiled by the mud and water, and they shine above the water. So Buddha explained himself as a lotus. Buddha was born as a human being, definitely to human parents, and he had a human body. He went through what the human body is going through, but through his development of meditation, development of wisdom and compassion, just like a lotus flower can rise above the water, the Buddha rises above all classes of beings. So it's beyond the world. But just like a lotus root is lotus flower is still rooted in the mud and then being fed by the water. So Buddha is living in the world, yeah, using this body, but his mind is like a lotus. So that's a very beautiful simile. So Buddha himself used that term, lotus. You can see in many Buddhist arts, iconographies, you can feel the symbolism of the lotus. In many cases, you see Buddha sitting on the lotus. That is to show that actually the status of the Buddha is just like the lotus. And Buddha lived in the world, in the human body, but actually he has transcended all forms of possible conditionings and limitations and defilements. And so this is very important simile for us to remember. And that shows us what it means to be enlightened, and what it means to be awakened, what it means to be the Buddha. And here we need to understand that actually Buddha transcended the defilements that usually all beings have. But in order to transcend those defilements, he penetrated to the true nature of reality. So there's a combination between wisdom and compassion, penetrate to insight, and then destruction of all defilements, and then result will be the bit is the compassionate expression of that purity of the mind. So when I think about this, how rare it is to have to how rare the appearance of Buddha can be in this world, because this the awakened state, enlightenment state, is actually is beyond imagination. All beings are simply conditioned by ignorance and conditioned by defilements, and we all already taken for granted the existence of ourselves. And when we experience the world, we experience different visual forms, we experience sounds, so we experience the world with our senses. So any ordinary being will simply think that however we experience the world, the way we see the world, when you open our eyes, we see all beautiful and of course many things. So whenever we encounter the world with our senses, hearing through hearings, seeing and tasting, we usually think that the world exists outside of us as we experience it. So we taken it for granted. We think that there's a world outside of us as we experience it. The way we experience it, the world is how the world is there. And on the other hand, we also take for granted an experiencer right here. Someone who is here permanently experiencing the outside world. So any ordinary being have that kind of understanding. There are two types of understanding. One is that there's a world outside there, and that world is exactly what we experience. And the world exists outside there as we experience it. And then there's an experience, a permanent experience right here. And this is how all living beings will feel their body, feel about themselves. But what the Buddha did actually, so instead of so many philosophies and religions, we try to analyze the world, as we experience it. Is it really there? Is it permanent? Or sometimes we try to protect the self. So what Buddha did actually, instead of trying to investigate the world outside, or instead of try to save the whatever we call I here, the Buddha actually turned his attention inward and analyzed how we actually experience this world. So instead of analyzing the world, what Buddha did was actually he analyzed how we experience the world, how we know the world as we know it, exactly in which way we come to know the world. What is the process of coming to know the world? What is the process that we come in to feel try to simply taking things for granted Buddha did was actually examine the very process of experience. So when we analyze the process of we come to know the world. And how exactly we come to feel the subject inside. And that is the analysis Buddha did. So it's a deep analysis that nobody did before the Buddha. And once he did that analysis, what he realized was completely different from our normal understanding of the world. What Buddha realized is that actually the world we experience is not necessarily the world existing outside there. Our sensory organs is a very important part of this, and our mental categories are a very important part of this. So what we experience is actually partly a construction of ourselves. If we had different senses, we will see the world differently. For example, other beings like devas, other beings like in other beings in different realms, they will experience the same world completely differently. And even animals will experience the same world that we are living completely differently. Of course, butterflies see more colors than we see, right? And dogs do not see as many colors as we see. So one example. And birds can see more colors, even ultraviolet colors. So what would be the world for them? When they open their eyes, what kind of world they are seeing? So that's what Buddha realized, that actually the world we experience is partly a construction of our senses and our mental categories. And then we attach to the world, the world which is not really existing there. We attach the world thinking that world exists outside of us. But actually what we are really doing is that we are attaching to the world that we construct with our sensory organs, with our mental categories. And that realization helped him to open up his mind, and then and also get rid of all forms of attachments and cravings. And so it is almost like all living beings are within this shell of ignorance. Nobody's questioning what the world they're experiencing. Nobody's questioning the subject, the I that is doing this experiencing work. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's analyzing that mechanism. So everybody's in like a shell. So this is like a blindness. We all beings have a certain blindness within. So we have this blindness. So almost like we are all in a shell. And then becoming a Buddha is like when all beings are within a shell, the only thing inside of the shell, never think about the outside of the shell, only staying within the shell, thinking that this is all they can experience. What Buddha is doing is actually almost like someone is like breaking the shell, breaking the egg of the shell. So breaking the shell of ignorance, and then coming out of it and see the world as it is, and realizing that how we construct the world, how we attach to the world that we construct, and taught us to have this deeper realization and get rid of all these defilements that we are creating for unreal things. And this is unimaginable, how one of beings who are in this shell of ignorance can somehow come out and explain all these things to the world. It's almost impossible. But that is what happened in the case of the Buddha. And Buddha realized that when everybody is in that blindness, when everybody is in that egg, within the shell of ignorance, and Buddha become awake. Buddha penetrated, and Buddha break the shell of ignorance and came to know the reality. And that is extraordinary. And that is what we mean by the term Samma Sambuddho. Samma, perfectly, Sambuddho, self-realized. In fact, actually, there's another sutra where Buddha actually described himself as a chick who actually first broke the shell of the egg. It's called Vairanja Sutta, also in Anguttara Nikaya, Vairanja Sutta, where Buddha gives an interesting simile of simile of hatching the egg. Hatching the egg. The Buddha says that in a population immersed in ignorance, become like an egg, completely enveloped. So this is how Buddha explained the nature of the world. Let me say it again. In a population immersed in ignorance, become like an egg, completely enveloped. I have pierced the eggshell of ignorance. I'm the only person in this world who has awakened to the unsurpassed perfect enlightenment. So in that case, I'm the eldest. This discourse was given by the Buddha in a situation that some people came into the Buddha and complained that Buddha uh, did not pay respect to elderly Brahmins. The people who are really very elderly. When they come, Buddha did not pay respect. So when they complained, that Buddha said that in terms of realization, in terms of enlightenment, I'm the eldest, I'm the senior. There, Buddha is giving this very interesting simile, like in a population immersed in ignorance, become like an egg, completely enveloped inside the egg. I am the one who pierced the eggshell of ignorance and then became the Buddha, and then taught the same technique, same path for many others to become enlightened in the same way. So that is the real meaning of the Buddha. So we have to be very, we should feel very fortunate. We should feel very lucky, that we are living in a period, where the teachings of the Buddha is available. This hatching of the egg. Buddha has done this and for us, and he has taught us also to overcome our own ignorance. Do not take the world for granted. Do not take the subject for granted. And realize that whatever defilements we generate, whatever attachment we generate, actually those things that we attach to do not exist the way we experience it. I'm not saying that there's no world at all. There's no objective world at all. I'm not saying that. Buddha did not say that there's no objective world at all. Of course, there are, physical elements out there. Like there are basic 4 elements, but the world do not exist as we experience it. So when we attach to things, we actually attach into the image of those things, not really the things over there. So those things that we attach to do not really exist over there. That realization is very helpful for us to overcome our defilements, to become free from this, attached state of living being. So that's what really Buddha wanted us to realize. So therefore, this simile of lotus and simile of hatching the egg are 2 important similes that we can understand the true nature of the Buddha. And of course, there are so many other aspects of the Buddha. You cannot really, talk about, Buddha comprehensively within a short period of time. We can talk about the Buddha for days and days and days. But I just would like to highlight 2 more things before I, wind up the talk. And not only Buddha really came out from this shell of ignorance and taught to the world, the true reality of the 4 noble truths. The 4 noble truths are really telling us in how we develop, how we experience, how we construct our suffering based on our ignorance and craving, and how we can overcome it. That's the real path Buddha has taught. So Buddha has so many other special abilities, and he was a very skillful teacher. Very skillful teacher. So not only Buddha became enlightened, Buddha also started to teach, and also Buddha established a community of disciples. That is the best gift Buddha has given to the world, establishing this community of disciples, the monks, nuns, and lay male followers and lay female followers, upasaka and upasikas. And this establishment of this community is a great contribution of the Buddha to the whole human civilization. And this is the society that Buddha created. And that establishment was done with this skillful knowledge. And of course, one thing I would like to pay your attention that during the time of the Buddha, So Buddha has had a good friend. There are many good friends, but one good friend was the king of the country called Kosala. And this king, his name was Pasenadi. He used to visit the Buddha quite often. And one time when he visited the Buddha, he was amazed by the Buddha's leadership and his ability to convince people, ability to teach people. And one day he came to the Buddha and he gave 8 reasons that he was amazed of the Buddha. The 8 is extraordinary qualities of the Buddha as a teacher. But I just explained one for you. And there, Buddha, the king Pasenadi, he's a very powerful king. He said that whenever he sit in a council in his court to listen to judge a case, and when he's sitting with all the council members of his court in this palace, and he always asks people to be silent. Simply first listen to me, be silent. But he said that no matter how I instruct them to give me chance to speak, give me, let me handle the case. So when I'm sitting in the council, somehow those, the council members break their silence and they interrupt me and they interrupt my speech and they don't wait until the end of my speech. No matter how much I instruct them, no matter how much I try to punish them, it's difficult for me to manage my council members. They don't stay until the end of my speech. They interrupt me. But when I come to you, this king is saying to the Buddha, when I come to see you, the Venerable Sir, when I see that you are giving a sermon to the monks, nuns, and lay followers, and when you are teaching a Dhamma to an assembly, several hundreds of followers, then there is not even a sound of a disciple of coughing or cleaning his throat. I haven't heard when you are giving a teaching that nobody in the audience will even clear their throat or even cough. There's such kind of obedience towards you. They really follow your advice and they are really respectful to you, and that is amazing, Venerable Sir. This is what the king said to the Buddha. So you can understand how influential was the Buddha, how Buddha actually tamed his, disciplined his community, how he trained his community. And one other thing I would like to share with you, Buddha was someone who really appreciated the silence. That's one important quality we have to remember. And this also found in a very interesting another sutra called Sakuludaya Sutra. And in this sutta, in the Middle Lane Discourses, there's an incident actually when Buddha went out for his alms round with his bowl, but realized that it's too early to go out. People haven't cooked their meal yet. So Buddha decided to go to see another another monastery, of other, ascetics. There were so many groups of ascetics, so many groups of religious teachers at the time of the Buddha. So Buddha was very friendly with all of them. So Buddha decided to go and visit another monastery of different practices, different beliefs. So when Buddha was going to that monastery, the ascetics, the hermits people, the practitioners in this monastery saw Buddha coming from a distance. The leader who was with the other ascetics suddenly told the assembly, "Sirs, please be quiet. Please be quiet. Make no noise. Here comes the recluse Gautama," which means the Buddha. "Here comes the recluse Gautama. This Venerable Gautama is someone who likes the silence, someone who likes quiet. He commends quiet. He praises quiet. Perhaps if he finds our assembly as a quiet place, he will think to join us. He will think of coming to come and talk to us. So if you really want the Buddha to come and talk to you, be silent. Because the Buddha is someone who appreciates silence. Buddha is someone who comes in silence and who likes silence. So everybody, and listening to their leader, the whole assembly, all the ascetics, became silent. And of course, Buddha came and there was an interesting discussion happened there. But what is important for us is to understand one important quality of the Buddha. Then he appreciates silence, and this is very important for us to understand as Buddhists, as followers of the Buddhists. We also try to like enjoy the quiet moments. We also try to enjoy the silence, and silence can teach us so many things. When you speak, you don't learn new things because you are just talking. But if you listen, you learn a lot. One thing you have to remember, that whenever you talk, you don't have a chance to breathe. Right now, I'm talking, so therefore I don't breathe enough because I had to talk a lot. So if you are talking a lot, you don't have chance to breathe a lot. And of course, we are talking a lot, you also don't have chance to learn a lot. Of course, it's important to express. I'm not asking to be silence all the time, but actually we need to like appreciate silence. Silence are the moments of wisdom. Silence is something that we can turn our attention in and experience what is happening here. It is with the silent mind that we get glimpses of insights. So just remember that. So I like to stop right here, just to summarize what I covered in this short sermon. The term the Buddha is a state that Buddha achieved, not his name. That means the awakened one, the someone who has realized, awakened, and penetrated to the reality of the world, reality of the life. And the lotus flower is the best example to understand the Buddha, the dual quality of the Buddha, the extraordinary, transcendent nature of the Buddha, but is still functioning as an ordinary human being, just like the lotus. But of course, the main quality is a transcendent quality. And the other simile Buddha gave is the simile of the egg, or the hatching of the egg. All living beings are within the shell of the ignorance, not questioning anything, but Buddha was someone who break the shell of the egg and then penetrate to the reality, and then taught us to do the same. And then Buddha was a skillful teacher, and he appreciates silence. So I hope that these things will help you to be little bit more closer to the Buddha. But now I would like to open the floor for any questions and discussions right now. Yeah. So please feel free to present your questions. You can either type your questions on this screen, and I hope that Brother Leslie or someone can forward those questions to me. Yeah, you have to unmute your mic, Brother Leslie.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for an excellent sharing, Bhante.
Welcome. Yes.
But surprisingly, we do not have any
Okay.
questions. Okay, I think there's
I
one.
can continue the. I can talk more about the Buddha. Until
But
more
I think
questions
hang
come.
on. I think there is a question.
Okay.
But this is not. This is this is not really based on the topic today. It's a bit off the topic. Would you like to look at it, Bhante?
Yeah, maybe I will explain. The one aspect of the the quality of the Buddha, and then we
Yeah.
come to that. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So, one thing I would like to elaborate more is actually the Buddha's scope of knowledge. The how vast was the knowledge of the Buddha, because he was able to like break the shell of the egg and penetrate to the reality, and he has such a vast scope of knowledge. But of course, Buddha only shared with us what is really relevant to our liberation. He knew so much, but he did not simply try to tell us everything. So he taught us only what is relevant to our liberation, our emancipation, our purification of our mind. So one time, I would like to say that in one time in the Buddha was working in a forest called Sinsapa, together with disciples, and then Buddha went down and took a handful of grass, handful of leaves to his hand, and asked from the monks, "What do you think, monks? What are more numerous? This leaves I have in my hand, or the leaves that is in this whole forest?" Of course, obviously, the monks answered that leaves on in your hands are a smaller amount, and if there are much more leaves all over this forest. And Buddha said that in the same way, monks, those things that I have known with direct knowledge are numerous. I have not taught those more numerous things to you. And why I haven't taught them to you? Because they are not connected with the goal, and they do not relate to the rudiments of the holy life. They do not lead to the liberation of your mind, and they do not lead to the direct knowledge and self-realization or to the nibbana. That is why I have not taught them. So you have to remember that Buddha knew about this whole cosmic systems. His scope of knowledge is so vast. That is why we have such a great respect to him. So he has only taught what is necessary for us, for our own realization, for our own liberation. Yeah, that also. And other than that, I should also remember that Buddha has a special set of skills. Because of his development of his mind, he has ability to remember his past lives. That is why he tells Jataka stories. Of course, the old Jataka stories are not real, the stories that Buddha has told, but there are few Jataka stories that Buddha has really told. And of course, later, we want more stories, and we collected more stories. But Buddha has ability to remember his past lives, and he has ability to read others' mind. He was able to listen to the pre-vocal vibrations of others. So he has tuned his mind to that level, so he was able to read the other's mind. And of course, he was also able to see the death and the appearance of beings in different realms with his the ability of divine eyes. And also he was also able to see the levels of defilements in each being. When someone comes to listen to the Buddha was able to see how much greed this person has, how much hatred this person has, as what is the most dominant defilement this person has, and then based on that he will give appropriate teaching. So he has that capacity, that ability. So Buddha is endowed with so many special knowledges, and that is why we call Vijja Charana Sampanno. Vijja Charana Sampanno, endowed with special kinds of knowledges and conducts. So have deep appreciation of the Buddha, have a deep veneration of the Buddha, and we are so lucky to be born in this kind of period, and not only being born in this kind of period, but also being able to have access, be like be able to be Buddhist, or be Buddhist, and be like willing to listen to the Buddha. This is so rare, impossible, almost impossible for a Buddha to appear in the world. But for our good merit, Buddha appeared, and he has given his teachings, and it is possible that for us also to follow the teachings of the Buddha and develop deep understanding and go beyond the general blindness that everybody is having. Don't be deluded, with the world. Don't be deluded with whatever we're experiencing, and be very mindful, be very observant what is happening, and then help our mind to be free from unnecessary defilements. That defilements bring so much suffering into our life. So we have the path to overcome our sufferings. We have the path to overcome our ignorance and craving. So be happy about that and keep venerating the Buddha. Yes. Now we can go to the question, brother.
And there are two other questions. Here's the latest question. Can you see it on your screen, Bhante?
Yeah, I
Are you
can
able
see.
to?
Yeah. Is it not our ignorance of not seeing things as they rule? Yeah, we attach to the view. We distinguish and identify the Buddha as we have been brought up to believe. Okay. So I think the question is that whether our understanding of the Buddha is also another kind of view, right? So I think we have to start with views somehow. We cannot simply directly see anything first. So our first understanding will be a view, and then of course we have to investigate the view. When we investigate the view, and we will penetrate, we will go beyond the view, and we will understand the reality behind it. But we have to start with view. In the case same with the understanding of the Buddha. When you are a child, you are not mature enough to understand the real meaning of the Buddha. I mean, as a child, we are still growing, try to make sense of the world. And so when you are a child, Buddha was, your elders will introduce the Buddha to you in one way, definitely. That's important. But we should not stop there. I think when you are a child, people will introduce the Buddha to you in whatever the way, and you somehow create a connection with the Buddha in that childhood. But when you're grown up, don't stay there. The elders have done their duty. Now it is up to you to investigate it and get more closer to the Buddha. So it's true that yes, we form images and views about the world, but that is where we start, and we just have to move beyond that. Is there any other questions, brother?
Yes, Bhante, there is one more question. That was, as I mentioned earlier, totally off. Wait, let me find that question for you. It's a long question. Can you read again, Bhante?
You saw the holy order in the years where majority of Christians. Do you face antagonism views towards Buddhism there from? Okay, I think briefly I'll say that of course I teach in here in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania in the US. The question is that whether we have experienced any antagonism. My answer is not really. I think of course it depends on the area also, but I think in most parts of the US, if you don't really bother people, if you don't go and disturb the privacy of the people, you are okay. As Buddhist monks, we don't really go out and distribute leaflets, try to convert people. We don't do it. We simply offer our teachings. We simply make our center available, and on anybody who wants to learn the teaching, they come to us. We don't really go to anybody's place, but they come to us. So our way of teaching is very friendly and not aggressive, and we just simply follow the Buddha's method, and so far it has been so good. I think there are educated group of people who are actually willing to learn the teachings of the Buddha, willing to put the teachings into practice. And of course, we are also serving not only the typical American community, but we are also serving Asian community, the migrants from Sri Lanka, Thailand, and in Nepal and other countries. So, but I think in the US now, particularly with regard to Buddhism, there's a positive image of Buddhism now because of the many studies and researches people are doing with Buddhist meditation, and people have come to know that Buddhism is not a really kind of religion kind of thing. You don't have to it's not something that will replace the religions in this country, but Buddhism is more like a method of living and a way of life, and something that you can practice even though you don't give up your religion. And particularly with meditation and research is done on meditation, there's a positive image of Buddhism. So therefore, it is very convenient for us to go and for us to talk about Buddhism. I think then one other element in the question is that somebody says that when Buddha predicted the arrival of Jesus Christ. There's no such thing actually. Buddha did not predict the future. I mean, of course, there are certain things that Buddha predicted, but we need to understand that future is still in the making. If you deeply understand the dependent origination, the Buddhist principle of causality, and whatever we experience right now is the result of what happened before this moment. and what's going to happen next is based on what is happening right now. So there's no like fixed future. Someone has already written down, and that is how everything's will going to unfold. If that is the case, what is the point of our effort? Our decisions, our behavior. Our behavior really matters. Our decision really matter. How we decide our decisions today, our behavior today will decide what is going to happen next. So there's no such fixed future. So therefore, Buddha did not predict future in that strict sense. But we can predict things based on present conditions. So there's no any place where Buddha predict the arrival of Jesus Christ or anything like that. That is false. That is wrong. And Buddha was very practical, and he really focused on the present time, and whatever our behavior decide what's going to happen next. The future is not fixed; it is open, and our future for our own life is also not fixed. It's open. It's still in the making. That is why we have to pay more attention. That is why we have to be responsible for our life. Yeah.
Bhante, there's one last question. I think
Okay.
it's a question that we'll have to summarize, and this is what the summary is.
Okay. The summary, who is the Buddha? Maybe summary will be the lotus. The lotus would be a good summary. Yeah. So Buddha is definitely an extraordinary being. You cannot really even call him a human being. We know that his mind has transcended all the tendencies of all other beings. So Buddha was extraordinary, definitely, and he's the guide, he's the teacher, he's the refuge for all sentient beings, not only human beings, even to divine beings, other beings of other realms. So Buddha is the great refuge for all sentient beings. He's the only one who penetrated uh, uh, through the egg of ignorance and told us what is really out there, and mainly he taught us how we can also become awakened and overcome our blindness to the reality, and then be free from defilements. So, in simple terms, Buddha is like a lotus, and he lived in human body, but he has transcended all classes of beings. So, only way you can call him is the Buddha, the awakened one. But he is a refuge for all sentient beings.
Okay, Bhante, I think we've come to the end of today's Dhamma sharing.
Yes.
Thank you very much for taking time off your busy schedule. I know you're extremely busy back in the States from
Yeah.
morning to night.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
before we end, I'd just like to remind our listeners, those who are tuned into our Facebook page, tomorrow night at 8:30, we have Dr. Nipunika Dilani, who's going to give us Dhamma sharing. It's called Ethics for a Family Life, a Woman's View. So I think this should interest many female viewers. So do join us tomorrow night to listen to Dr. Nipunika. And before we end, Bhante, would you like to transfer the merits to the Devas and the dearly departed?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'm so glad that you had such a nice, beautiful day, a wholesome day today. This will be a real offering to the Buddha. We can offer the Buddha through material items like flowers and candles, but we can also offer the Buddha by our practice. So I think you can dedicate all your practice today you did as an offering to the Buddha. That will be the offering that Buddha will appreciate the most. So I'm very glad that you had that, and you also now listen to the Dhamma, and I'm very grateful for all the people who sponsored this Dhamma talk. And let us now take this moment to dedicate the merits. We can think about all the goodness we generated since this morning, and also by listening to this Dhamma and contemplating on the nature of the Buddha. The more we reflect and contemplate on the nature of the Buddha, our mind becomes pure and purified. By making our mind purified and wholesome, we generated so much of merit, so much of good karma. Let us now generously share these good merits with everyone else. First of all, let us share these merits with our departed relatives. people who have passed away, people who loved us so much, people who are no more with us today. Let us share this merit with all of them. Particularly today, let us dedicate our merit to beloved father of our Bhante Sri Dhamma, our resident monk in Buddhist Mahavihara, and also the principal of Sunday Dhamma School. And let us dedicate this merit to his father, his late father Pemaratana, and may his Bhante Sri Dhamma's father, Ranchagode Pemaratana, may he rejoice in these merits, may he benefit from these merits, may he has a smooth transition to his next existence, may he able to achieve a higher form of rebirth in order to achieve enlightenment sooner. Let us also share these merits with all of your departed relatives. You can bring whoever relatives you would like to share these merits with, and may all of them, including the father of Bhante Sri Dhamma, Father Premadasa, and all other relatives, may they all share these merits. May they all benefit from these merits. May they be well, happy, and peaceful. Let us recite together. Idang mi ñātinang hotu sukita huntu ñātayo. Idang mi ñātinang hotu sukita huntu ñātayo. Idang mi ñātinang hotu Sukita huntu ñātayo. Let us also share these merits with all other living beings. If there's any living being in this world who like to share these merits, may all these beings, including divine beings and all other beings in other realms, may they all share these merits, may they all benefit from these merits, may they all be well, happy, and peaceful. Ettavata che ammihi sambhatang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya ettavata che ammihi sambhatang punya sampadang Sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya ettavata che ammihi sambhatang punya sampadang sabbe sattha anumodantu Sabha sampatti siddhya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So, Bhante, we've come to the end. So once again, on behalf of the Committee of Management and also the members of the Mahasangha from Buddhist Mahavihara, let me take this opportunity to thank you once again and hope you had a good Vesak.
Yeah, most welcome.
So your Vesak is about to start, ours is about to end.
Yes. Yeah, so we will have programs over the weekends too.
Yeah. Just like us, we will carry on throughout this month. We'll have a number of talks as well.
Yes.
So have a pleasant evening, everyone, and see you again tomorrow night. Thank you, Bhante.
Welcome.